Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy, Boulanger, and up next in this video, we're going to jump right back into our series, Beast of the AFC North, where we'll be taking a look at who has the best perimeter weapons in the division. Do me a quick favor as we get started, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you get updates when we upload new content. Let's go. So, who has the best perimeter weapons in the AFC North? Right now, that's probably a pretty easy answer, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. For this conversation, we're going to use a website who has a metric of ranking players and position groups called lineups, and they have the Cincinnati Bengals ranked as the #1 wide receiver tight end grouping in the entire NFL going into the 2023 season. In fact, the same website has the Cincinnati Bengals ranked #1 going into the 2022 season. So basically, for an entire season plus, the Cincinnati Bengals, excuse me, have held down that #1 spot. And so when you begin to think about it, you got to look at what that position group consists of, and in the AFC North, and being Baltimore Ravens fans, we know who those guys are. So this group is headlined by Jamar Chase, followed by T. Higgins, and then you got Tyler Boyd bringing up the rear in that interior slot position. Um, Now, Cincinnati Bengals has some loss at the tight end position, but they replaced Hayden Hurst, who departed for Carolina, with Irv Smith, who is a young talent, 24 years old, who has some athleticism and ability to stretch the field from that tight end position. And they also brought in Jordan Atkins, and so when you look at this group, this group of Higgins, Chase, and Boyd, they're one of two position groups, meaning wide receivers who went for over 700 yards last year, having three receivers to go over 700 yards, and so I guess that keeps them at the top along with those other additions. Now Chase and Higgins both went over 1,000 yards, and so it makes sense to have them near the top of the food chain, so to speak, in the NFL, but also certainly in the AFC North. Um, Now, personally, I think that this grouping has almost peaked. I thought that Joe Burrow had peaked when we talked about him at the quarterback position. And if Joe Burrow has peaked, then his wide receiver grouping has peaked. And when I say peaked, I don't mean that they can't exceed those numbers from 2022. I just mean the way the ball is distributed, they're going to be somewhere close to the numbers they had this past year. And I know Chase missed a couple of games with injury, things like that. So his numbers could have been a little bit better. But I certainly think they'll be somewhere between 12 and 1,300 yards, which is not significantly higher than where they are. But I think this group has reached its capacity for the most part. And so let's look at the #2 position. So wait a minute. So I give them a 4. I put them at the top in the AFC North, and so that you understand how I come out with these rankings. And so there's 32 teams, which means there are going to be 32 position groups per the group. And so I divided the 32 into 4 segments. If you're in the first top 8, you get a 4. If you're in the second 8, you get a 3. Third 8, you get a 2, and then the bottom 8, you get a 1. And so because they are the #1 team, they get a 4. And so then whenever you begin to look at where the Baltimore Ravens fall, the Baltimore Ravens actually, surprised to me, come in ranked in the #11 spot in the entire NFL. And so that puts them in the #2 position for wide receivers and tight ends in the AFC North, significantly higher than the other two teams, and we'll talk about them in a second. So the Baltimore Ravens were ranked coming into the 2022 season as low as 28, which means they were near the bottom. So they made a significant jump with the additions they made of Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers, and Nelson Aguilar. Now, the reason why I was surprised that the Baltimore Ravens were ranked as high as 11 is simply because Beckham, Zay, and Aguilar all are question marks. We understand what kind of players they are. We understand what kind of players they've been at previous stops, but we do not know what they'll look like in Baltimore. We all have projections, we all have an idea, but it's more of a question than it is what we've actually seen. And so I'm super surprised that they were afforded this. And so why I believe they were pushed up as high is because of our tight end group. I think that we have in Baltimore the best tight end grouping in the entire NFL. Now, let's be clear. I'm not saying Mark Andrews is better than Travis Kelce, but what I am saying is our grouping, meaning Andrews, Likely, and Kolar, is the best collection of tight end talent in the NFL. And so I think that's what pushes us up into that top 12 positioning. And so, because we understand Mark Andrews is a perennial Pro Bowler and an All Pro, we saw what Isaiah Likely could do in the preseason. And we also saw his talent, his skill set, his athleticism when he was filling in for Mark Andrews. And then I've heard a little buzz about Kolar, his ability to run routes, his athleticism, although it hasn't made like big media or whatever, but I certainly have heard a little buzz about him. And so I think that it's been our tight end group that has pushed us up into that that top 12 spot in the 11th position. And so so I give the Baltimore Ravens ranks out of 3. All right. So then when we take a look at who's next, the Cleveland Browns are next. Now, the Cleveland Browns are ranked by lineups all the way down at number 22. Now, I was surprised at this um, uh, coming into the 2023 season. And in the 2022 season, they were ranked going into that season at number 20. So Cleveland has taken a step back according to lineups. As it pertains to talent and production expected. And so we understand that the Cleveland Browns grouping is headlined by Amari Cooper, who finished with over 1,100 yards last year, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who had over 800 yards, and then they picked up big addition, question mark, Elijah Moore, who probably play that interior slot position. They do have David Njoku, I think I pronounced his name correctly, at the tight end position, athletic guy, big guy, good hands, can make downfield catches, contested catches. And so a report is that he has picked up 30 pounds of muscle this offseason. He's going to be playing around, excuse me, that 270-pound mark. And so he could be a dangerous weapon for the Cleveland Browns, but they have them ranked in the number 22 spot. And so, again, this is not me being biased. This is just me using the information that's already out there available to us. And so, because of this, I'm going to have to give the Cleveland Browns, put them in that 3rd spot and give them a 2. All right. And then the what's that last team? Oh, Pittsburgh Steelers. That's no disrespect. I just couldn't remember at that moment. The Pittsburgh Steelers comes into the number 23 season ranked and in at number 24. And so and I was super surprised by this because going into the 2022 season, they were ranked as high as 17. And so so they've fallen significantly 7 spots. Now we know that the Pittsburgh Steelers grouping is headlined by Deontay Johnson, who is a really nice interior wide receiver. Sometimes he can play outside, but he's mostly operating from the slot. George Pickens, rookie from last year, showed a lot of promise, athleticism, downfield catch. Matter of fact, he ranked number 6 in the whole NFL with downfield catches. And as far as yards, and so so we know he has some talent. And then they picked up Allen Robinson from the Los Angeles Rams in a low-cost trade, adding him to that wide receiver group. And so He's probably the biggest question mark of that grouping because he had a significant drop off last year. He did not perform well in that LA Rams system. Now, this is a guy who's played with poor quarterback play his entire career until last year. But then, the Rams just kind of fell apart last year. So, that kind of helped explain why he had such a fall off. So he could certainly have a resurgence in Pittsburgh, but we have to deal with the ranking as it is today. The Pittsburgh Steelers have, I think you pronounced the tight end, Smooth. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. A guy who caught for over 700 yards last year, 63 catches. So he certainly was a guy who showed he could catch the ball and make some plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they had an addition of Darnell Washington. They drafted him in the 3rd round. Now, Darnell Washington may be a wild card. He's a monster of an athlete. He's 6'6", about 240, and he runs under 4.5 from that tight end position. And if he can stay healthy, he could be a big addition, a big weapon. But of course, we have another question mark. And so lineups have them ranked low. And so they must have deducted big time for the loss of Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool would have been included in the ranking going into 2022. And so when you lose Chase Claypool by trade and you replace him with Allen Robinson, they must, based on Allen Robinson's numbers from last year, they must have a huge deduction for the Pittsburgh Steelers for them to be ranked that low. But I guess the truth is, when you watch the competition in the AFC North division, maybe these guys will look better in the division competition than they rank holistically in the NFL. That must be how that's working. So you see, because whenever we watch these guys perform against the Baltimore Ravens, we see these guys making plays. We saw George Pickens killing the Baltimore Ravens last year. We saw Deontay Johnson making catches against the Ravens last year. And so you kind of get a perspective that these guys may be exponentially better than what they rate out. But nevertheless, it is what it is. So Pittsburgh comes in to that 4th spot, and I'm going to give them a 2. So just to review, the Cincinnati Bengals have the number 1 wide receiver tight end tandem in or grouping in the whole NFL. So I had to give them a 4, put them at the top of the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens, number 11, I give them a 3. And then Pittsburgh and Cleveland, or Cleveland and then Pittsburgh, I give them both 2s. So they bringing up the rear with Cleveland at number 22 and then Pittsburgh at number 24. Now, Cleveland fans, Pittsburgh fans, do not hate, because these are not my metrics. This is not my information. I'm just retelling the story and then giving my assessment on top of the information that's already provided. So when we look ahead at the 2023 season, I think, again, the Bengals have a cap. They're probably they're probably not gonna exceed much of what they've already done. I'm not saying they can't, but they're probably not going to exceed much of what they've already done. The Baltimore Ravens probably have the potential to make the biggest jump because we have the most questions. We've seen film on Odell, we've seen film on Zay, and we've heard that Nelson Aguilar is working out hard at the facility. And so all those are questions, but we have the most potential to make the biggest jump. I don't know what that looks like when we get on field. I believe with Todd Monken's system, that certainly has a chance to happen. I think our offense has the ability to be super dangerous, especially if health prevails. You got Andrews, you got Likely, Kolar is going to get some field time this year, especially with the departure of Josh Oliver. And so I think that we have an opportunity to step into that top 10 ranking at some point during this season for sure. And then especially with our ability to still run the ball. When you look at the Cleveland Browns, who come in at number 22, they'll probably increase their ranking based on production sometime this season. But I think that Amari Cooper's numbers will get better, especially with a healthy Deshaun Watson, a whole Deshaun Watson for the entire season. I think his numbers gets a little better. He'll probably go from about 11 to about 13 to 1400, probably being the number one wideout. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones touches 1,000 yards this season, and so his numbers get better as well. And I don't know what Elijah Moore will do, but I think that mixed with these two guys, he could certainly have a productive season, 700 to 800 yards. I'm not really projecting. I'm just talking about how these groupings can get better. And then Njoku will still be a force like he always is. And then in Pittsburgh, I think Pickens and Deontay Jones both go over 1,000 yards this season. Um, especially with Kenny Pickett coming into the season as the starter and healthy. And so I think it's going to be a battle. But right now, the Cincinnati Bengals lead in two major categories, and that's both the quarterback position and the wide receiver tight end room. The Baltimore Ravens come in second in quarterback, wide receiver, um, and tight end room, and then um, you got Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Now this is no way indicating how the season will go. This is just what the numbers talk about. So listen, let me know, man, if you think that lineups has it right. Let me know if you think my assessment is right. Should Cincinnati still be at the top? Should Baltimore still be at number two? And should Cleveland and Pittsburgh be bringing up the rear as they are projected based on the groupings? I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM, and I am out.